Welcome to the Open to Hope Show. I'm your host, Dr. Gloria Horsley, with my daughter and co-host,
Dr. Heidi Horsley.
Well, Heidi, Father's Day is coming up this Sunday, and I'm missing my dad. Mm-hmm. I really do. Your grandpa.
Right. So, and we are going to do a show on missing our parents. I have two parents on the earth, so I don't really miss them because one's sitting next to me.
Right. Oh, yeah. You do miss your parents.
Yes.
And, it's interesting. People are surprised because, I had a son die, and that's been kind of the reason we got started, Heidi,
Right.
with this whole process through the Compassionate Friends. They got us started doing a radio show, and then we've gone on, and we have over 1 million visitors visiting us. We have fabulous writers that write for us, and we've got a couple that are going to be on the show today, and we have thousands of articles online. It's amazing what's happened in the last 12 years through coming on the internet. Of course, Scott died many years ago. But the interesting thing is, I was so surprised a couple of years ago. I was looking at the demographics of our site, and our number one visit was parent loss.
Yeah.
And it's not kids losing parents, it's adults who have lost parents, looking for hope, healing, looking for ideas, and dealing with their grief through the internet.
Well, and Mom, I was surprised at first, but when I really thought about it, I thought this makes sense because you never knew your life without your parents.
Right.
We grow up with our parents, they're in our lives. We don't even know what it looks like to have a life without them. So I imagine, and we'll talk to our guests about this, I mean, when your parents die, it's like, wait, who am I without my parents? Mm-hmm. And, they're no longer here. And I remember when my husband lost his father, who they were very close, and he said, Heidi, I feel like my whole life I've done everything to make my dad proud. Mm-hmm. That's why I did it. And I don't know who to make proud anymore. Mm-hmm. It was such a void for him.
Mm-hmm. And I was telling a friend of mine who lost her mom, I said, there's a little side aspect here that's kind of weird. When you're older and you lose both your parents, it's like, okay, it's me now.
Right.
It's me. I'm here. And it can be a sad part. It can also be, okay, I got to stand up. I'm the one that's there, and I can do it. So that's kind of what we're hoping for you to get today, is to realize, hey, you can do it. And also to validate, normalize, and respect that grief. Because for adults who lost parents, I don't think sometimes there's the kind of support you're looking for.
I agree with you, Mom, completely. And also the idea of parenting yourself if you need to, and thinking, what would my parents say to me right now? They're not here. How can I kind of bring them into my life in a new and different way? Mm-hmm.
And if you haven't lost a parent, by the way, this is a time when you can think about some of those issues, and when it does happen, you kind of have a little money in the bank, or a little ideas, a little hope in the bank, right?
Yeah. So let me introduce our two guests today who are experts on this topic. And again, we are going to be talking about missing our parents. Lisa Irish has 2 graduate degrees, one in education and one in theology, and I love that combination. She worked formerly at Yale New Haven Hospital as their bereavement coordinator. She is a chaplain.
Good job.
She runs retreats, and she has written a fabulous book called Grieving, the Sacred Art, Hope in the Land of Loss, and she is also an Open to Hope writer. So welcome to our show, Lisa.
Thank you. It's great to be here. Thank you.
Great to have you on. Thanks for coming.
And next to her is Lauren Muscarella.
That was very good.
She is a hospice volunteer, and she wrote the Mama Quest blog. She does the Mama Quest blog.
Which was very popular, and we had her on our radio show, so if you want to hear her on the radio, you can go on to Open to Hope and Google her name, and you'll hear us talk about the Mama Quest blog.
She has written a book called Alice's Law, Finding Deeper Meaning and Honoring Lost Loved Ones. And she now has an audiobook. And I know you have the books here too, Mom, if you want to show them.
Yeah, I've got Alice's Law and Grieving, the Sacred Art by Lisa Irish and Alice's Law. Great books.
So please go on
reads.
to Amazon and get these books and read more about these topics.
So, all right. Well, I wanted to ask you, we had you on for Mama Quest.
A while ago.
Were you surprised what happened when you started talking about your mother? You got a lot of people coming on, right?
Yeah, when I first started the blog, my experience was a little bit different. I've heard your experience of losing your brother. We were the same age. You were 20 and I was also 20. So there are similarities, but one of the things that was different, my friends were so great and they were so supportive, and they're still some of my best friends now. But I really took a different approach and really avoided it and kind of compartmentalized it and just said, okay, I think partly because I wanted to make my mother really proud. So I was like, okay, a good way to, like, instead of being sad is to really study hard and focus and then get a really good job. I mean, my graduation from college was on Mother's Day and I started working the next day full time. And just for 3 years, like.
Now, how old were you when your mom died?
I was 20.
And how did she die?
She had breast cancer. She had breast cancer that she actually was diagnosed when she was 35, and she treated it alternatively, and she was determined to be cancer-free in her early 40s, and she was doing really well, and then the cancer came back. When I was probably a teenager. It's kind of hazy in my memory because I think she really shielded me and didn't want me to make decisions about my future based on that. Didn't want me to pick a college that was closer because she might not be around, so I didn't really know exactly the details.
Well, I love that she really wanted you to be able to live your life to its fullest, and she didn't want to hold you back in any way.
And I think that that's a wonderful message, and it's definitely comforting to me now, 11 years later. But I think at the beginning, it's a big job.
Yeah.
Live your life to the fullest. Okay, but my mom just died. Oh my gosh, that's like a really big, so I really tried to do that, and I had a lot of great experiences, and I had, luckily, in the jobs I had, when I got back from my funeral from my mom, I got fired from my internship because I worked for this like marketing agency, and they were really like serious, and they were like, "You're going to be too sad." So they fired me, and it was actually
awful.
It's awful, but the best thing that could have happened to me because the internship I got right away after that were 2 women who were 10 years older than me, who were mentors, who are still 2 of my best friends, and it was like
wonderful.
Meant to be.
Wow, we sometimes talk about peer support and women supporting women and that kind of thing. Fabulous. What was your experience, Lisa?
My father died when I was 11, and it was after a long illness. He had type 1 diabetes. And then we moved from California to Washington. My mother lived with and married a man who wasn't safe. And she died when I was 25. And my grief around both of them was sort of complicated by the fact that when I was 18 months old, she was in a car accident and went to rehab for 6 months and stuff. So the little 18-month-old sort of experienced loss at a very unformed time, not really understanding what was happening. So when the physical losses came along, they were pretty shocking. I'm still now getting memories of my past because I think it was a long road for me. That's why I write about in the book the idea of the land of loss, because when you have a death, suddenly you're just thrust into a location that you don't know your way around, which is why having peers, as you've said in other programs, is helpful because they're in the land of loss with you.
Yeah, great point. I was thinking when you were talking about your mother that I think one of the pressures that can come with having a parent who has a long-term illness is that I've seen that sometimes the parents can't, as they're ill, they can't stand the thought of you suffering. So they therefore want to say, or even a spouse saying, get married as soon as, get married again, or go out and do it, or live because I'm dying. You got to grieve it. And sometimes, people dying don't want to think of their loved ones hurt after their death, but it is part of life. So I think you're making a good point. When did you finally realize that you had to stop and grieve it?
So that's how I started Mama Quest. The first thing that sort of happened, this idea after my mom died, she had written this children's book for a friend who was her son was having a hard time at school, and it was this beautiful book, and I was like, I wonder if I could just illustrate it and just show the world to continue her memory and her legacy. Like, that was always in the back of my mind. And then I was thinking about doing that, which is not like an easy thing to do. So I'm like, oh, I'll just illustrate a book. Like, it's complicated. But at like 25, so 5 years after she had died, I had this idea, like, okay, well, I'll try to work on that. That's probably a long-term project. But can I talk with her brothers? Can I talk with her sister, other people in her life, my own brothers, my dad, and just hear new stories about her and not necessarily just talk about how we miss her and the loss, but like, there's a lot of things about her, and at 20, I don't know everything about my mother, of course. You know, there was going to be this other relationship, adult relationship that we would have had that we didn't get to. So I just started blogging about her and trying to find out more about her. And that's when all of these other people from college who, you know, you're in college, you're kind of in a silo. You don't know if people's parents have died or if they've experienced a loss. But other people started reaching out to me, and I started putting it on a website. And
Well, I love that idea. And both of you lost like you had virtually no parents by 25.
Correct.
And your mom died at 20. These are very young ages, and your father died when you were 11, very young. And like you said, you know, you were grieving not only your losses, but the future. Because as we age, we need our parents for different things. You know, we might have a child and want to ask our moms or dads, okay, give me parenting advice.
Right.
Tell me, I mean, I go to my mom all the time because I have 2 kids and ask her things that I wouldn't have asked her if I was 25 years old. So I just think of the things, you know, that you probably miss and don't even realize you miss them until you get to that milestone in life.
That's right.
And you never stop, because I'm like thinking now that I'm older, I'd like to ask my mother what she did about this. You know, did you get cataract lenses? You know, what did you do? I mean, you know, there's all sorts of things she could tell me that
I had such an interesting experience with grieving, you know, because sometimes the emotions come in an unpredictable way. We were at a retirement party, and somebody turned to me and asked me about retirement and what it was like for my parents. And I instantly burst into tears because I never observed that. That
amazing.
Loss hadn't even occurred to me yet.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you, what for folks who are watching this that have had both your parents die, and most parents die at different times, and you had you were younger when your dad died. Did you know what was the difference between having an early loss and having a later loss? And do you think there was, how did it impact you that you'd had an earlier loss and then had a later loss as an adult?
I guess my first reaction would be, at 25, I was married, I had a job, I was teaching, and I had a sense of purpose. Where I was 11, I was still under the parenting of my mother, who was on crutches. She was paralyzed from the waist down from this accident. So it was a confusing time, sort of like walking around in a fog kind of time, I would say, as 11.
Did it make you harken back to remembering that? Did you have any post or your separation or anything from when your mother died?
I don't think so. I don't think at that point, no, it was more about survival. I think my story has been about moving from survival into thriving.
Yeah,
and that's where the healing.
Yeah, because I do hear sometimes when people have multiple losses that they almost don't know who they're grieving for, or that their grief might be really big all of a sudden and they're taken back by it, and they're realizing it's because it's connected to other things that have gone on and other losses that have gone on.
Yeah.
We've actually had people on our show who have had multiple losses at the same time. Remember, we had a woman on who had like 3 people and her husband die, 3 kids. And what she did was she compartmentalized that. She had an actual grieving time
For each
where
person.
she would separate each grief because she wanted to, you know, honor
and
those
probably
griefs.
also not get totally overwhelmed.
Yeah, because you're right. It was.
I mean,
that's what we said to her. You know, weren't you totally overwhelmed? And she said, I had to.
I mean, I know in my own situation, which was a little different, because my brother and cousin died together. They were both 17. My cousin was driving the car, and I wasn't as close to Matthew, my cousin, but I also remember putting his loss totally on the shelf and saying, oh, he didn't die, he's on vacation. Let me just focus on my brother, because it's too overwhelming to think of two families totally devastated. So I did intentionally compartmentalize, and probably not to feel overwhelmed, because you know, when we're in our 20s, we were all in our 20s, you want to look semi-normal for your friends, because they don't get it. A lot of them don't. And they don't have a lot of tolerance for people that are grieving for a long period of time. Did you find that to be true?
Yeah, yeah. People's lives, they stay with their own experience.
Yeah.
And that's one of the aspects of disenfranchised grief, right? No one really knows what you and I are going through.
Yeah, talk about disenfranchised grief, because when you say that, not everybody knows what you're talking about. And it's such a good.
It's the idea of grief being minimized, of it not being recognized culturally or socially. A lot of times it happens because the grief, the loss is something that's painful until people don't want to go there. They don't even want to talk about it.
Or you might not even think that you have the right to grieve.
Right.
Right. Right.
And Lauren, I was struck by the fact that you said your friends were supportive, right?
I think I maybe lucked out.
I know you did. That's amazing.
I
Because my friends didn't get it at all at 20. They were like, what? Get away from us. We don't
You know, I always gravitate to just sort of old souls, and the friends I had at American are still a lot of my best
American University?
American University in DC. And one of my friends from that time, from American, she contributes to the book, and she also did the developmental editing on the book. And I had a really amazing friends. I actually feel like I experienced that more with my mom's own family, actually, it was really hard for them to deal with, and they just kind of wanted to compartmentalize it, to put it out of their minds. I think because they were dealing with their own mortality, and they had already lost both of their parents by that time. So I think they were just dealing with their own issues, and they just didn't have any room for being, kind of coming together as a family. Like, I still don't really have a relationship with that whole side of my family.
I think one thing that's really important to remember is not everybody's good grief support.
Right, that's for sure.
And sometimes you meet some new friends that you never knew you would connect up with. And then sometimes your family who aren't good grief support want to come back to you when you're better, and you'll have to decide whether you want to welcome them back in. And forgive them for not being good grief support.
Yeah, that's definitely a tricky.
Yeah. Well, you've got something in your book, Lisa, about, I loved it, how do you prompt hope?
Oh, promptings of hope.
Prompting of hope in this book right here, Grieving, the Sacred Art.
Yes, thank you.
Hope in the Loss of Healing.
Thank you. Hope in the land of loss. Promptings of hope are much like the rituals that you were talking about earlier. It's exercises, or I call them experiments, because even when you're in the midst of sadness or confusion, you can say, okay, for 10 minutes, I'm going to try this. And I only need to commit for the 10 minutes, and then I can go back to being a little less joyful. But I'll try joy for 10 minutes. Or other kinds of rituals, creating a gratitude list, or
gratitude, that's really important. We've talked about that
making
before.
Christmas ornaments that are remembering your loved one and giving them to people. Little activities like that are examples of promptings of hope.
Well, I like the one when you said wrap a gift. Because I feel like, there's this thing about the 1 minute rule, which is do something that you can successfully complete in 1 minute. So you feel like you've had a success. Make your bed. And like you said, wrap something. I mean, do something so you feel, okay, I'm competent, or I've accomplished something that makes you feel good.
One year I gave myself a birthday gift that I thought my mother would have gotten me.
Oh, I love
Wrapped it up, put it under the tree. I was in my 30s probably, but it was great because she was part of that Christmas. She always gave me the best presents, So.
I love that. So what did you give yourself? I've got to ask.
Oh, it was it was a rose vase, a real sphere, a glass sphere that roses can go in.
Oh, I love that. That's a great idea.
That is a really good idea.
So in your book, Alice's Law, Honoring Loved Ones and Finding Deeper Meaning, tell me about, you got it off the internet, off of MommyQuest, or how did you
How did I put the book together? Yeah, it was just, I started this blog, which I thought was just a blog for me to experiment and write. I love to write, and it was so cathartic, and then it made me feel a lot closer to my mom, and I ended up kind of uncovering these other things about her that I didn't know, and other people told me stories. Because I put it out there, you get this reaction. So people, her friends wrote me letters or cards and told me things about her that I didn't know.
Oh, I love this.
One of my mom's best friend and another close friend of her sister came, and my dad just couldn't package all the stuff in their bedroom. It was like too much for him. There were little things that he wanted to keep, jewelry and little things that she had. And he kind of set those things aside and asked them if they would go through all her clothes and shoes and do that for him. And they're amazing, and they came in, and she said, I did that with Sandra, and then your mom she always looked great in red, and I just kept the red sweater for myself, and now I wear it, and it reminds me of her, and it keeps me close to her. And I never would have known that had I not started this and just put it out there. And you don't have to start a blog, but just communicating, putting things out there, emailing a group of people, telling people where you are with your loss or with your relationship. And it can have this ricochet effect.
It's been amazing on Facebook, because it's been all these years ago, and about 4 years ago we started putting stuff about Scott on Facebook. I mean, when did we start doing Facebook?
I started putting stuff on Facebook when Facebook started.
When was it?
That was.
I don't know.
2005?
Yeah, 5. And since then we've gotten all these, somebody even made a video about Scott. And it's been, he died in
1983, and I have heard stories about him that I've never heard before.
Just recently.
I will put stuff on Facebook and say it's Scott's birthday today, or I miss him, and he was very involved in his high school. He was a junior when he died, but he varsity lettered in 3 sports, and was a very nice, just a really nice person. Everybody loved him, and so everybody comes in with all these stories I've never heard, and it's amazing. And I'm like, thank you for sharing this. I didn't even know this. It's so awesome, and I think that's one of the positive things about social media, is that it can give you new information.
Someone gave my book to a friend who had lost a parent, and based on the book, they were inspired to create a day for their parent on Facebook.
That's
so
cool.
that every year, she told me about it the other day, and I was like, that's such a great idea. I should have put that. So she has this day, and people know about it, and they come, and they all write stories or write messages to each other, nice memories, or, just giving that person support.
I love that.
And she has people, say that they're going to do something nice in honor of her parents' loss.
Fun. Pass it on. Yeah, I love it. I love it. And you can give money and things in honor of your parent, or do some activity in honor. I love it. Well, talk to us about your retreats. I know you do retreats.
I've been doing, because of this book, I've also been doing programs in churches and libraries, which is only an hour and a half, which on a retreat we have a full day. So I want to help people get a flavor of what it means to be on retreat as a grieving person. And I've come to the conclusion that one of the greatest gifts that a retreat or any of these other programs offers is it gives people a place to be sad. It gives them permission to just be with their sad feelings, and to let them know that that is a good thing. That's part of the healing. It's a sacred space, because I'm a person of faith. I set a tone without any kind of religious overlay, but a tone of respect and regard for the sacred process of grieving. And people really respond to that, and I think it's helpful.
I get the impression from knowing you and reading some of the things you've written, you don't see grief as a negative activity.
No, this is my big thing. This is my contribution.
I love it. That's a big contribution.
That's just what I tell the people. I say, loss is the bad guy. Grief is not the bad guy. Grief is your ally in the land of loss. Grief is your companion. It helps you through this life-changing event, which is loss.
Yeah.
And I tell you, that little shift has been very helpful for people.
That's big.
Grief is a good guy,
Grief
and
is
of course
the
our
good guy.
culture doesn't support that. We get 3 days off, or we avoid people. We don't want to talk about it because it hurts. Grief is our ally.
Yeah, I was saying to someone, we were just down in Parkland, Florida, doing a day of healing down there with the Bob Racinini Foundation. And one of the things I said, we were doing a panel, and I said, you always grieve, but it shorter. That's the difference. You recover.
A lot
you
faster.
hear it, and you may recover immediately.
A lot faster. And a great example of that is a couple of years ago. My brother's been dead 35 years. And a couple of years ago, my mother gave us teddy bears at Christmas. We didn't know what they were.
I wrapped them in big, fabulous boxes.
My brother was very athletic. Like I said, I opened it up. My brother he loved the New York Jets, and he wore the sweater all the time. I opened up the teddy bear, and it was his sweater. Mm-hmm. It was the teddy bear with his sweater. And my sisters had the Letterman jacket on theirs and another jacket. We all burst out crying. I mean, burst out crying. And my mom was like, whoa.
I was like, why did I do that? I had these things there, and I thought, finally, you know, you always keep a few. Did that.
The clothes.
I thought, I'm going to do, you know, purging everything.
They were his clothes, and you know, and teddy bears. But the difference was, we grieved it, and we kept telling my mom, no, this is a beautiful thing, and we recovered in 5 minutes, and we went on with Christmas, and we were in a good space. You know, early on in my grief, that would have ruined my day.
Yeah.
It would have been, you know.
It was like that.
The language I use is conscious grieving.
I like that.
And invite people to participate in the process instead of being a victim to it.
Oh, that's good, because we do feel like victims when we've had a death.
Yeah.
So it's very empowering, the way that you look at it. I like that.
Mm-hmm. Well, tell us about, you got your, Alice's Law is going to be on
Audiobook, yeah.
I love that.
I just recorded it. So it's an interesting experiment, really, because I'm sure most people write their book and then they do the audiobook right then, but I just couldn't do it that way. So 3 years later, I actually had this wonderful studio audio journal donate their space and their production to me.
How great.
My oldest brother is blind. So I've been involved with this organization, and they do a radio show, and sometimes I co-host it with them. And the executive director was like, we really want this to be an audiobook. We want our listeners to be able to use this resource. There aren't a ton of grief books that are made into audiobooks. So he donated the space, and now I'm so excited because my brother's actually going to get to read my book.
That's amazing. That's pretty cool.
So that part, especially for me, is like very exciting.
And everybody's going into audio. You can walk around the city with, you know, a headset on.
I know.
And read your book.
It is perfect timing, because now I feel like people really are listening to everything in the car and the podcast and everything. So, but doing the experience of reading it again years later, and some of this stuff, I wrote it when I was 25, and then edited and tweaked it, and then the book came out in 2015. So, I mean, I'm reading it, and I'm like, wow, that's smart. I should do that. And I'm like, you know, just, I even say in the intro of the book, after I recorded everything, I did like an intro and an outro thanking people.
Now tell us how we find you.
Oh, you can find me at laurenmuscarella.com, and it has all the information about my book and links to everything, and all my social media. It's probably the best way to do it.
All right, and get Alice's Law. And where do we find you?
LisaIrish.com.
And your retreats and everything are listed on there.
All the
and
programs
your book is
and
up there on your site, and you can probably get it at Amazon too.
Right. I have a little elf help book and some care notes.
Right. Well, thank you so much for being Open to Hope authors, and that you can also find them on Open to Hope. They've written some great articles for us.
Yes,
so
thank you
so much for being on the show today.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you.
Well, Heidi, great to have them on. Isn't it fun to have these Open to Hope writers?
It is, and I love that we're talking about parent loss, because I don't think that we've done enough with that. And like you said, people need this information.
Absolutely. We want to thank you for watching our show today. And Heidi and I always want to remind you that if you've lost hope, please lean on ours until you find your own, and God bless.